Hauser with Fox joining us in a moment. Before we get going on this Monday coming out of the July 4th holiday weekend, hope you had a very nice weekend, a good, meaningful 4th. That hot weather sticking around today. We still have a heat advisory through 8 p.m. tonight. Jack, Heath, J-Dog on the boards. Hey, Alexa. Hey, Google. Play the Pulse of an H. Our poll question up on X this morning at the Pulse of an H as we get going on this Monday is, do you think the New Hampshire red-hot housing market, where we've seen these hot housing markets around the state, one of the busiest regions really in New England. Do you think it's going to continue? Do you think it's cooling? Do you think the housing market is cooling? And even in places like Rockingham County, Hillsborough County, do you think it's cooling? Yes or no? We'll come back to that. J-Dog on the boards. Hope you had a good 4th there, buddy. We'll come back to that. But some of the news talk happening this morning. Now it's on to tariffs and trade deals. We'll hear from Paul Steinhauser in a moment, as well as some peace efforts continuing in the Middle East. Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli prime minister, at the White House today or tonight. First time the two leaders from Israel and the U.S. have met face-to-face since the U.S. strategic strikes on Iran, in person, that is. And just continued thoughts, heartfelt, just prayers and thoughts on what's happened in Texas. Camp Mystic alone in Hunt, Texas, 27 campers and counselors, including the founder of that camp, dead after the Guadalupe River, the river overflowed, or the flooding coming out of July 4th weekend. In all, the numbers are absolutely devastating. It looks like there are in all upwards of 80 victims, and I'm not sure they've gotten through all of it yet. And this is just President Trump's scheduled to visit that area this week as we see more and more concerns there. But Paul Steinhauser reports nationally for Fox News and, of course, Fox News Digital joining us, New Hampshire's own. Good morning, New Hampshire. The Pulse on Edge. Good morning, Paul.
Good morning, Jack. And I guess when it comes to campaign politics, the big headline from the last couple of days is Elon Musk threatening now to form a new political party called the America Party, Jack. And we know Elon Musk has a lot of money, right? He's the world's richest person. He spent almost $300 million on behalf in support of Trump in last year's presidential campaign. So Musk, as we know, he has had issues with the president of late. The one-time best buddy, now very much rivals. And Musk did not like that big, beautiful bill that the president signed into law on July 4th, on Friday. And because of that, now he is promising to start his own political party, a third party. And the idea is maybe to run candidates in a couple of Senate and House races in next year's midterm elections. We'll see if he puts, if this really happens and if he follows through on this. Hey, talking about that big, beautiful bill, Jack, I was out on the campaign trail Friday on July 4th. Talked to Chris Pappas, Democratic congressman who's running for Senate in the race here in New Hampshire to succeed Jeanne Shaheen. I also spoke with Scott Brown, the Republican candidate. Obviously, the bill is going to be, now the law, is going to be a big talking point in the midterm elections, Jack.
Yeah, and more names may jump into that U.S. Senate race, hearing at least Dan Innes, state senator, planning on running, talking to people about raising money. Phil Todd, someone I know well, we do a lot together on veteran stuff as well as other stuff, and I think a lot he's being talked to. And Scott Brown, of course. We'll see where it goes. Paul, let's get back to Donald Trump. Even if you're one of the harshest critics of Donald Trump, it's been quite an amazing 2 to 3 or 4 weeks if you look at everything put together, including the signing of that bill on July 4th.
Absolutely. Listen, it shows two things. This president is relentless. Whether you agree with him or not, this president is relentless. And he did something which was really, not easy to do. Push this bill through Congress, because his party the Republicans have razor-thin margins in both the House and Senate. And it was a major accomplishment over the last couple of weeks to get this thing done politically. So you got it, whether you agree with him or not, you got to give him credit for getting this done and signing that bill.
Yeah. All right. We'll see where it goes. Thank you very much. Thank you, Paul.
Thanks, Jack.
We're going to hear from Brad Cardin in a moment or two at 9:20 on that signing of the bill, what it means politically. We haven't really done a deep dive because of all the stuff happening, but the state budget here in New Hampshire, very interesting. All that came together, and eventually no veto from the governor, and the other bill on the table where they satisfied the governor's concerns over the Group 2 piece of the state retirement. So no continuing resolution, no special session. We'll get a breakdown with Anna Brown in a little bit. Citizens count kind of the winners and losers from that. But speaking of the races, definitely hearing a couple more people are looking at jumping into there on the Republican side of the U.S. Senate race. Chris Pappas, the Democrat, first incumbent, the member of Congress who's running now in the Senate from the 1st Congressional District. Pappas, pretty much from a Democrat point of view, frozen the field, but not so much on the Republican side, it looks like. But on the governor's race, now that Kelly Ayotte and lawmakers have kind of agreed to a new 2-year budget for New Hampshire. I spoke to one, I actually bumped into on the Seacoast this weekend, one leading state Democrat, very connected, as they say, very respected in the Democrat Party, New Hampshire, just talking friendly and casually about the governor's race, what Democrat's going to run for governor in New Hampshire. His quote was, "It's a very tall order now. Very difficult for a Democrat to run against Kelly Ayotte. One will, maybe more than one." And the only name he said he's heard is Cindy Warmington, who had run before, former executive counselor. She did not get the nomination last time around. Joyce Craig did, the Manchester mayor, and she fell short by more than a little to Kelly Ayotte. So we'll see where all this goes, because there's certainly a lot happening. And one of the stories coming out of the weekend, I wanted to just touch upon this. This is an interesting bit I picked up in Maine, the state of Maine, neighboring Maine. There's a thing called the Maine Wire, and it's more the Republicans in Maine trying to get more of the stories out about just the fiscal insanity in the state of Maine. I want to just share with you, this was an interview that was posted on the Maine Wire with one of the Democrat legislative leaders talking about New Hampshire in particular and how we do it. How do we survive without an income or sales tax? Let's have a listen, if I can find it here.
Graphics are different, but I think Maine has an aging population. We're obviously extremely rural.
So do they. I mean, their average age is like about a half year behind us. They're right up there with us. I don't know. New Hampshire is a good example to be using because they have chosen entirely different methods of funding their government, and they still get plenty of money and they still fund plenty of things, and yet they have not added to the burden on income tax, sales taxes. I mean, even their corporate tax, for God's sakes, is better. It's I don't know. It's a totally different philosophy, and that's kind of the source of my question. Yeah, and as you know, they also have really high property taxes. Oh, so don't go down that road, sir. I mean, ours are actually higher than theirs. Ours are higher than theirs are, and at the very least, they're comparable. There's nothing about New Hampshire's that's worse than us.
That's I believe a radio or someone of the Maine Wire. It might have been WGAN for credit, but that was a Democrat leader in Maine talking about New Hampshire. Remember, I told you about a month ago on that tax study, independent tax study of all the states per the overall tax burden, factoring everything in. That includes property taxes. That includes your local taxes, everything. New Hampshire's one of the least. The tax burden is one of the lowest in the country in New Hampshire. I think New Hampshire's second to last in terms of tax burden. Maine's number 4 or 5, ahead of Connecticut and California, with their income and sales tax, and they have one of the highest per capita property tax burdens in the country, even with the income and sales tax. So that argument that, just bring in a little income tax and we'll lower property taxes doesn't work. Just look at Connecticut, look at Maine, look at these states that have everything. So New Hampshire continuing to confuse and basically stump the nation when it comes to how do we do it. How do we live in the only New England state without an income or sales tax? Amazing. All right, we have a lot coming up. We'll get back to some of the stuff. Busy time in Washington. The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at the White House later today, meeting with President Trump, looking at trying to get a 60-day ceasefire in place in Hamas. I don't know what legs Hamas is standing on anymore. They still have hostages. Can you believe that? Unbelievable after all this time. We'll keep an eye on that. And tariffs, trade deals, letters going out today. That's going to be a focus of the Trump administration after the big political win, regardless if you don't like the bill or not. It's a huge political win. This was a big bill. The tax cut bill, the bill to get through the Senate and then the House, as tight as it was, a big win going to July 4th for President Donald Trump, Republican House Speaker, and Senate Leader Thune. Big win. And we'll talk about now it's on to tariffs and trade deals, as well as trying to get some peace deals. We have a lot also coming up. We're going to hear from Neil Levesque this morning. Anna Brown, Citizens Count, will be weighing in live. And our regular contributors, Rory O'Neill, NBC News Radio National correspondent. Hey, Alexa. Hey, Google. Welcome back on this Monday. Play the Pulse of an H. Hey, Alexa. Hey, Google, the Pulse of an H. And, of course, extra signals up into Maine. FM on the Seacoast were added on top of our AM and FM network, WTSN 1270 AM, 98.1 FM, and 98.7 FM. HD2, digital clarity. Lakes region, we have you blanketed with an extra FM signal up there as well. And 107.7 FM as well. Hey, Alexa. Hey, Google, play the Pulse of an H. Heat advisory sticking around through 8 p.m. tonight. That's today. Thunder Boomers on the way to cool things down as we get into the week. Hope you had a nice July 4th, a meaningful July 4th. Remember, freedom is not free. Jack, Heath, J-Dog on the boards. Back in a few.
The Boston Red Sox. On the Pulse of New Hampshire.
All right. Reminder, we will be live Thursday at the Alpine Gold Exchange, Elm Street, Manchester, doing the show ahead of their big grand opening that day. Alpinegold.com. We'll hear from Adam tomorrow. That's this Thursday. Hope you had a great weekend. July 4th. Heat advisory sticking around today. And I will say yesterday it did get hot. Just that wasn't just the temperature, it was the real feeling of hot later in the day. Sticks around today on the hotter side, maybe not quite as bad. Get some thunder boomers and some rain moving in to cool things off as we get going. Brad Card, one of our political analysts and all-stars and co-host of Contact Politics on our podcast network here in the Pulse. Wednesday, we'll have our own Paul Steinhauser as a guest. Paul, of course, national reporter for Fox. He's covered the presidential stuff for decades. We'll talk midterm elections and the presidential stuff, but midterm elections with Paul on this Friday with Brad. Brad Card, of course, one of our political analysts and all-stars, talking about a big weekend in terms of a bill signing on July 4th. Now it's on to tariffs and maybe some peace deals for the Trump administration. Good morning, Brad.
Hey, Jack.
So, we were talking with Paul before we get into some of the stuff. Midterms starting to take shape. We can come back to that. But even if you're a big critic and not a fan of Donald Trump, and maybe even not a fan of the so-called big, beautiful bill. Chris Pappas, of course, Democrat running for the U.S. Senate, critical of it. It's been a big, a couple big weeks for President Trump. I mean, he's kind of on a roll right now. Now that can change in a couple weeks or a month. The tariffs are still uncertain, but that was not a small undertaking to get that bill through a very narrow majority in the House and the Senate.
Yeah, very small majority. Lost 3 in the Senate, and you lost 2 in the House. And at the end of the day, it was a huge win for the president. It was what he's been pushing for. A lot of arm twisting. Look, you had the Freedom Caucus, who I'm not a big fan of anyway. They came out with this big letter detailing all the reasons why they weren't going to vote for the big, beautiful bill. And they voted for it. They all caved. So it's kind of been their MO, but give Donald Trump credit for being able to twist arms and to get these guys to fall in line. It was a big win. Quite frankly, it's something that Kevin McCarthy, who I was a fan of, was not even close to be able to doing with the Republican conference.
And what does this do nationally on the Democrat side? You have races in New Hampshire where this is going to kind of the Trump term, the Trump agenda, the Trump factor, even though he's not directly on the ballot. This next midterms in this U.S. Senate race, you're already seeing Chris Pappas, running against the big, beautiful bill, as they call it, because of the Medicaid side of things on health care. What does this do for Democrats? Is it obviously too early to tell on how this, where the midterm and independent voters are going to be typically, historically, but it doesn't mean it will happen, Brad. You know this. After a big election like November 5th, the other party tends to do well in the midterms. So some would think it would be a little more blue than red or purple. But too early to tell right now on this?
Well, no, I think this is the time when campaigns need to really step up, and they need to be talking about what's in the bill. There was a lot of really good in that bill, and there was a lot of really bad in the bill, quite frankly. And Republicans need to be talking about the good things in the bill. And Democrats are going to be pounding on Medicaid and on SNAP. Now, a lot of those Medicaid cuts won't come into effect until after the election. So it's going to be hard for them to say. I don't think you're going to see the hospital closures that I will continue. You may end up seeing some hospital closures as a result of this bill. But it's not going to be before the midterm elections, I don't think. And so I think that you've got to get out there. Republicans have to get out there and talk about the good things that are in this bill,
right,
and why they supported it. And I don't think they've done that to this day. And I don't think Donald Trump has either. He's taken a couple sound bites, but he's not really gone out there and sold the bill, in my opinion. He was the one who was out time and time again saying that no cuts to Medicaid, and he wouldn't agree to any cuts to Medicaid. And now you see,
right,
the Congressional Budget Office say there's $1 trillion worth of cuts in Medicaid. So he's got to get out there and sell it, because I will promise you Republicans will be running the ads of him saying no cuts to Medicaid and then signing that bill.
Right. Hey, Brad, let's talk about Elon Musk for a moment. Forming a new party. He has the money to kind of influence politics. As we know, he played a heavy hand in supporting President Trump. Now they've fallen apart. They come together, falling apart. No, they're not going to be hanging out together for a little while. But how does this look and the timing of this? And I'll give you my quick take. I've said from the beginning, even when Elon Musk was there in the White House, there in cabinet meetings, they're leading DOGE, Department of Government Efficiency, star of the day, right on through the period of keying Teslas because, he's there with Trump. Brilliant, incredibly smart entrepreneur, but obviously a little crazy brilliant, if you follow me. I'm not going to get into behavioral analysis and things on Elon Musk. But doesn't this look, the timing of this, if you're Musk, of course, if you're Elon Musk, you don't really think the way you and I might. But I would have thought, wait, focus on your businesses, move on, build better rockets, get Tesla more going, do what you want to do. You're really good at creating businesses. And then if you want to weigh in kind of, in that midterm cycle, kind of get going on a third party system. But what's your take on the Elon Musk wants to form this new party?
Well, Elon Musk has not showed a lot of political acumen, and I think that if you're a team of political consultants, I think you can list a whole million reasons why this is going to be a really challenging endeavor for Elon Musk. That said, I think a lot of people are very frustrated right now with Republicans and with Democrats. And Donald Trump, we've talked about it before. I don't really think he's a Republican. I think he's a populist. Yeah. And he has not been certainly a traditional Republican. And I think that there are I think most Americans are fiscally conservative and socially tolerant. Mm-hmm. And I think that the Republican Party is becoming increasingly less. I would say not. I wouldn't say all parts of the Democrat Party are fiscally conservative, but go ahead. Well, they're not. I mean, that's my point. Democrats are zero fiscally conservative, and I would quite frankly say that the Republican Party right now, serving in Congress under Donald Trump, is not at all fiscally conservative. Right. We've talked a good game, but we're going to add another $3.5 trillion to the deficit, and we just did a $5 trillion debt ceiling increase. That's not fiscally conservative. So I think that there is a group of folks that they're going to have to be small, and they're going to. If you really want to do this, you're going to have to try to build it from the ground up, and it's not going to take place overnight. It's really hard to put a candidate for president and run as a third party. I've talked to Mike Bloomberg about that. When he tried and talked about it and really examined it and just said, our system is not conducive to a third party running for president, and it's just too difficult. Right. To get on the ballot. Never mind anything else. And you saw that with Robert Kennedy. I think there's a big I think there are people a lot more dissatisfied than satisfied. But you're right. Donald Trump is Donald Trump. He is the Republican Party. He's a brand. He's a figure. I also think of something your colleague, one of our earlier podcasts, Contact Politics, I think Jim Messina said. The thing about Donald Trump is people underestimate even though he's never run, before he first ran in 2016, what a good natural political politician, his instincts, how he can define stuff. He's the best counterpuncher. People underestimate he's a pretty good politician for someone who historically is not a politician, and Elon Musk is not. And I think that's your point to a point. Yeah, I look at Elon Musk's political acumen is not good. Look what happened to him out in Wisconsin. It dumped a ton of money and what was the race out there? The judge race out in Wisconsin, and it was a waste of money and imploded on him. I think that you end up seeing Elon Musk not be very politically astute, make a lot of mistakes. Even his counterpunching to Donald Trump, quite frankly, has not been very smart. So, I think he has a lot to learn about politics personally, and he's got a deep pocket, got a lot of money. Sometimes money's not enough. Yep. All right, Brad, we'll look forward to Paul Steinhauser on Wednesday with National with Fox and Fox Digital, of course, from New Hampshire, as our guest on Contact Politics. Make it a good Monday. Enjoy the heat. Thank you, Brad. Yeah, we'll see you. All right, we'll come back. Neil Levesque, Institute of Politics. We haven't really done a sort of a post-state budget signing for two-year budget after the mess or the battles and the contentiousness in the State House. We'll see who the winners and losers were. Neil Levesque will weigh in. And then Doug Tengden at the end of this hour, looking at the economy. Our poll question up on X. Do you think New Hampshire's
real hot housing market is cooling overall. Do you think it's cooling or leveling off? Yes or no? Hey, Google, hey, Alexa, play the Pulse of an H. J-Dog on the boards. We're back in a moment.
This is the Pulse. Good morning, New Hampshire, live from the Outdoor Pride Studios. Now back to Jack Heath on the Pulse of New Hampshire.
All right, we are back. A reminder, trying to keep up with everything with the Pulse of an H. Get the app, get our daily stuff. We were just ranked last week by one of the online, on-demand streaming kind of measures of people who, when they did download Good Morning New Hampshire, the Pulse of an H, one of the top downloaded streaming content from our Pulse of an H. Download the app. Get the app, by the way. Local news, national stuff, local weather. You get weather. We break up the news by Lakes Region, Seacoast, Manchester, Concord, you name it, national, international, the Pulse of an H. Also, streaming on YouTube. If you want to watch first hour of the show, just go to YouTube, the Pulse of an H. We'll make it easy for you, by the way. As I've said, a lot of times people can't remember their passwords, their pins, their codes for all the stuff that we have today. Different, your dog's name, your birth date, twisted backwards. People can't remember. I tend to keep it simple, but the Pulse of an H, make it easy for you. Everything's the Pulse of an H. Hey, Google, hey, Alexa, play the Pulse of an H. We're going to hear from Neil Levesque, Institute of Politics, one of our contributors. J-Dog, let me know, please, if Neil's on, or you maybe already did and I can't see you in there, but Neil will be checking in. We'll be live Thursday. By the way, great time to get silver and gold as part of your security and your financial investments. It's never been easier. alpinegold.com. Just click buy or join. And if you buy, don't forget, speaking of the pulse of an H, use the word pulse at checkout. If you get $100, silver, $50, $500, get some gold, get some silver. You can do it. You can invest a little bit, $50 a month, and get little add to your account in gold. You can do your IRA and that stuff. But the point is, if you buy on the Alpine Gold, have it shipped to your home, just pulse in the checkout. Just do pulse in the checkout. Shipping's free. Pulse in the checkout. We'll be live Thursday. Their big grand opening on Elm Street in Manchester, Alpine Gold Exchange, man, this Thursday. So check us out, 9 to noon. We'll be there. Adam will be in tomorrow talking about that as we get going on this pretty hot day out there, Jada. I can have a chance to catch up with you, and I think all the stuff we had going on last week, busy week going into the 4th. Jada, good weekend or not?
Saw the fireworks in Concord at Memorial Field, so that was good. Other than that, too hot. Guardians are awful right now, 10 in a row. They've lost 10 in a row. They're going to be sellers at the deadline. Don't be surprised if the Red Sox pick up some Guardians.
And look at the big shakeup in Washington right after the Red Sox swept the Nats, right?
Yeah, they got rid of Mike Rizzo, the GM, and also Dave Martinez. Both were part of the 2019 World Series team, so they're starting all over. That was my World Series, Cleveland and Washington. I don't think that's going to happen this year.
Yeah, interesting. All right, we have a lot going on. Trade letters going out today from the White House with timetables for a deal, and that's sort of the focus now. But Neil Levesque, one of our political analysts and all-stars, Executive Director, Institute of Politics, St. Anselm College, on a Monday morning coming out of July 4th. Good morning, Mr. Neil.
Good morning, Jack.
So where do you want to begin? Do you want to talk some of the national stuff, midterm stuff? It's been a busy month, if you will, going into July 4th. You had the state budget battle locally, got resolved in the 11th hour. No continuing resolution, new 2-year budget. Kelly Ayotte got what she wanted. Lawmakers, maybe not everyone got what they wanted, but that happened. The big, beautiful bill signed. President Trump, July 4th. Where do you want to tell me what your observations are?
Well, we did have a busy time, and I think that obviously with the federal bills and with the state budget, that's all now in the rearview mirror. And I actually think this week's going to be a little bit slow in politics. I think a lot of people are on vacation. Again, those two big events happen both nationally and here in the state, and I think things have slowed down. Now you're starting to see some candidates getting in some of these races. This is still really early. I mean, we have 11 months before they even can file for the office. But some of the folks that we're seeing, it's Christian Ureta. I can't really pronounce his name. He's apparently a resident of, I believe, Wolfboro. He's going to run as a Democrat. We're seeing potentially that Dan Ennis, state senator, pretty well known, is considering running for the U.S. Senate.
I think it's more serious. I think he's more there than not.
Yeah. So he would be an interesting candidate. Very, very talented legislator. He's served in 2 state Senate districts. Very well known, as I just mentioned. So I think that he's a very credible candidate. As far as needing to get the activists that are involved, raise some money, do some things like that. And of course, former Senator Scott Brown is also in the race, apparently. So,
oh no, he's in. He's official. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, let me ask you a question. I could see a scenario that Kelly Ayotte doesn't really get involved in the primary. No, I'm sorry, but Donald Trump is interesting. He might take a pass too, but it's a U.S. Senate race. It's a big race. It's one of the bigger openings in the country. That's why Chris Pappas got into it early on the Democrat side. Scott Brown would obviously love, I think he'd appreciate the Trump nod. He was his ambassador to New Zealand. He also, hosted cookouts, was very supportive of Donald Trump. But I'm hearing that one of the opinion pieces that he had written didn't go well with the president on January 6th. So I don't know. But I would think that after what happened with the big, beautiful bill and how Donald Trump once again showed the Republican Party is the party of Trump or vice versa with the signing of that bill, getting it through the House and Senate. And here in New Hampshire, I think that's Doesn't mean you win the general election, but if you want to be that nominee in a U.S. Senate primary, you probably want the Trump nod. So is that a factor or not? In the if Innes gets in and maybe even a few others, does a Trump nod go to someone, or is it not necessary?
Well, if you get the Trump nod in a Republican primary anywhere, you're going to win that primary most likely. That is so valuable, so valuable. The problem with that is that then you get tied to that in a general election. And in New Hampshire, I know that Trump has a lot of supporters here, but they're not over 50% according to polling. So that can be an albatross for you in a general election.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, Trump has also shown that he's very transactional with support. So again, if he didn't like something that a former senator said or wrote about, he may withhold his support, almost like a personality, problem. And you got to be a little bit practical, I think, if you want to keep that U.S. Senate. And you got to say who's going to try to win this seat, who's going to be in the best position to win.
Yep.
And Trump hasn't necessarily always shown that practicality. I will say more and more he's doing so. So I wouldn't be surprised if eventually he gets into the primary, if he gets into the general election, flies up here and does things. Whether or not that helps that candidate, I can't say. But again, if you look at the polling now,
right.
And it has been in the past 6 months, Trump's numbers are well below 50.
If you're a Democrat leader, activist in New Hampshire, and you want to see Democrat leadership locally at the State House, and you're looking at taking on Kelly Ayotte, it seems that order has gotten taller after sort of the start of this session, culminating with the signing of that budget, and Ayotte holding the line to get what she wanted for the Group 2 retirees and the state employee association support. It seems that is a little more challenging. We don't see a Democrat. I don't hear a bunch of names of people, sort of chomping at the bit to run against Kelly Ayotte.
Well, this is the other reality. So on the national level here in New Hampshire, they have a good slate of candidates to hold the congressional seats, but they don't have a candidate to run against Kelly Ayotte for governor. And I think, here you have someone who is she's everywhere. I mean, I think even somebody who doesn't support her could say that she's everywhere. And she is very much in tune with things that are going on in the state. And her budget battle, she won. And I think, too, the other factor is she hasn't had rookie mistakes. So here we are 7 months in, and some of the rookie mistakes that governors make, or anyone getting into office, usually staff-driven mistakes, by the way, you just don't see that. And she has become, I think, a very formidable candidate for the Republicans, and that may be why no one's really stepped up. We hear Atchelder, the state senator from Portsmouth or Stratham area, may jump into that race, and some other names have been floated, but you really haven't seen the activity that you've seen on the congressional side.
All right. Good stuff. Thank you, Neil. Stay cool on this Monday. Thank you, Neil Levesque, St. Anselm College. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack.
Heat advisory is sticking around about 8 p.m. tonight. Then we could see some thunder boomers and some showers coming tomorrow to cool things off. Looking at a pretty good hot Monday, though. Hot Monday coming out of yesterday. Really, really hot stuff. And, I look at what happened in Texas, especially at this Christian camp for girls, and I'm just looking at this. Just a really sad story. Beyond devastating. It's almost like you get speechless. You look at the you look at the number of young people and the stories, or that father who saved his family, and which is just so incredible. But the number of young kids, and then you hear about 2 young sisters who were killed and sent their parents a heart. I mean, I don't know how else to say it. Breaking "I love you" right before they drowned. They were only 13 and 11. Hands were together. They were found in the river, close to not far. 82 people have now died in this incredible devastation along this river outside of San Antonio, Texas, coming out of the July 4th on Friday, the weekend. 41 remain missing. 10 girls and a counselor, and I think one of the one of the main owners of a man in that camp, the Camp Mystic. It's a Christian summer camp, Camp Mystic, along the river where 27 people died in the floods, including the young folks. And one of the original owners or founders of that also died. He was said to be a wonderful, wonderful, selfless human being. So I'm just looking at this going, it's just incredible. The stories and the young people. Really, really sad story. Mother Nature can do what it does, and it did. It's just so sad, especially with the young folks. So just thoughts and prayers. I don't know what else to say. Hey, Google, hey, Alexa, play the Pulse of an H. Jack Heath. J-Dog on the boards. Doug Tengden taking a look at the economy, because that's still some people scratching their heads. Back in a moment.
News. New Hampshire.
All right, we are back. We are back on this Monday. Doug Tengden, World Market Advisors, worldmarketadvisors.com, one of our regular partners and sponsors, looking at the economy. Good morning, Doug. Hope you had a nice 4th.
I had a lovely 4th, Jack. How was yours?
It was very nice. A lot of the ocean was involved, but that's a little bit hard to get to where you're from, but I hope you had a nice one.
Yeah, we have the mountains up here. You know, sometimes you have to choose between the mountains and the ocean.
Life is tough. Hey, I want to come back to real estate, but just real quickly, the so-called, I think the focus now in the Trump White House, you can sense today, is on trade deals, tariffs, letters going out to countries with a deadline. I'm not sure all the countries will stand in line in the deadline, but the point is that there's a renewed focus to get some trade deals done right now. But the economy, even with what happened, the U.S. striking the nuclear targets and Iran, the economy just seems to be moving beyond a lot of stuff that surprises me right now in terms of the markets. Take it away, Doug.
Yeah, the market leads earnings, which leads the economy. If the market goes up, that's in anticipation of corporate earnings going up. And if corporations are earning more, they're generally going to hire more people. And hiring is the sine qua non of economic growth. And so I've talked about the employment is weakening. It looks like things are weakening and hollowing out and so on. I'll say something that people rarely say online, Jack. I was wrong. I was wrong about the economy weakening. The economy, if anything, is getting stronger, and the market is anticipating that. So sometimes the market gets it wrong. In this case, I think the market is getting it right, that the economy is stronger than anyone expected, and that's why interest rates are staying higher, because the Fed is not moving. They're not moving because they keep seeing economic growth. And the employment report that we had on Thursday confirmed that. It just confirms that the fact that this economy just is stronger than people expected.
I always look at things when I look at an economy. I always use these barometers in the past, but lately I've been a hard time understanding this economy, especially when I talk to younger folks and I share perspective on interest rates and remembering when they were incredibly double-digit high. And, some of these young folks are used to 3% fixed mortgage interest rate on their mortgage. And I'm like, you don't understand. You're probably never going to see an interest rate below 5 or 6% again the rest of our lives. And that historically is pretty low. But I'm looking at things like, I always felt from my WMUR TV news days as a news director that one of the barometers that works is if you are a professional and you hypothetically lose your job, speaking of unemployment, or you and whoever your partner is, one of you lose a pretty good 6-figure job, how quickly can you go out in the economy and replace at least what you're making? And can you? And that's a sign of a strong economy. So, if there's a couple out there and someone's making, I'm just throwing this out there, $150,000 a year with a high-tech company, they lose that job. Can they go get another job making 150? That's always a test, I think. And then the next one is real estate. Design centers, construction, wood, glass, hardware stores. Are people spending money on their homes? It seems like there still are here in New England. And are these record high prices going to hold in terms of selling your home? I don't know.
Yeah, and the record high prices are a result of limited supply. The limited supply is coming from two things. One is the fact that people locked in those 3% mortgages and they're not leaving them. But some people are having to leave, and eventually the higher prices are squeezing out inventory so that people are putting their houses on the market at these upper levels. And of course, they can always build. If you can find the land and get the permits, that's always an issue, is permitting. But then you can build, and that's why you're seeing activity in the hardware stores. I do think real estate has been healthy and remains healthy, certainly here in the Northeast.
Yeah.
I clicked on that no. Oh, are things cooling off on your just a little disclosure on your poll?
Yeah.
But I also think that the time in unemployment is higher than normal right now, but it's pretty steady. It's certainly not rising. And so while people are worried about the weakening labor market, I don't see a break coming anytime soon.
All right. Doug Tengden on a Monday. Thank you, Doug. Stay cool today. Still hot till about 8 p.m. tonight. World Market Advisors. Thank you, Doug.
Jack, you have a great cool week.
Thank you. We'll hear from Anna Brown in a little bit. Citizens Count top of the 10. Rory O'Neill top of the 11. We've got a packed show for you. Just a moment or two on some commentary on the economy. I think sometimes, or at least locally, why, to Doug's point right there a moment ago, why people are paying and these record high home prices here in New Hampshire, Maine, New England. And it's the old, okay, you could sell your home and make a lot of money, but where are you going to move to? Where are you going to go to? Because anything you're going to buy is not going to be cheaper. And that's just the reality of where we are. But I think people sometimes complicate reasons. Yes, it's inventory. We don't have as much inventory. The demand is outweighing the available homes. I get that. In other places in the country where it's slowing down, maybe Florida, inventory is outpacing, or the number of homes on the market is outpacing the buyers. So it's a buyer's market. Here it's a seller's market. I get that. But I think sometimes people and I look at New England, and I'm looking at the country and some of these, and I don't know the reason for it, but some of the severity of, you hear about certain places in the country for insurance, or it could be, certain places, wasn't just Florida. People forget Asheville, North Carolina. Speaking of floods, remember Hurricane Helene and the damage it did. Hurricane Helene in North Carolina, which was viewed to be a safe retirement home, places like Asheville. So I think New England is just, New Hampshire, Maine, it's just a safe place to live. I think people look at it that way. I think it's that simple. It's a safe, solid place to live, both in public safety, thanks to our great public safety folks, fire, EMT, police, sheriffs, state police. It's a safe place to live. But Mother Nature, I mean, really, we have a couple months that, we have winter weather, which some people love. We're a tourism state, we're ski areas, our snowboarders, and if we have enough snow for snowmobile, but it's a safe place to live. I mean, the biggest weather aberration might be other than some flooding with a high tide and a lot of rain in the south end of Portsmouth, for example, is having a ice storm and some branches fall on a power line during the winter and a windy nor'easter, and you were without power for 5 or 6 hours. But that's a lot different than having part of your home destroyed because of a tornado or hurricane. So I think people look at New England as a safe place to live, and they're willing to pay more money for that. And I think public safety is one of the biggest drivers, and I think people have been missing that. It's not just the lower tax burden, no income, no sales tax. That is a big, big, big part of it, and a huge part of why. And we have a really cool motto, by the way, coming out of July 4th, live free or die. But I think it's public safety at the end of the day. All right, some commentary, 603-228-2080. So we come back. Anna Brown, Citizens Count, looking back on the budget deal between state lawmakers and Governor Ayotte. Winners and losers next with Anna.